She said it because she was tired. Tired of the smiles that cut like glass. Tired of the careful words that meant nothing and everything at once. Tired of being 23 years old and watching her future narrow to a single dark corridor with no windows and no light. Celestine Ashford stood in Lady Hartwell's garden, holding a glass of champagne she had no intention of drinking, and felt the weight of 5 failed seasons pressing against her ribs like a corset pulled too tight. Around her, the garden bloomed with color. Silk gowns swept across manicured grass. Gentlemen murmured in clusters, their voices low and conspiratorial. Somewhere a string quartet played something light and forgettable. The afternoon sun filtered through oak trees, warm and golden, as if the world itself had decided to be kind today. But Celestine felt none of it. She felt only the eyes, always the eyes, watching, measuring, finding her lacking. 23 and unwed, 23 and unclaimed, 23 and running out of time. Her friend Octavia leaned close, champagne-sweet breath tickling her ear. You look like you're attending a funeral, not a garden party. Celestine forced her lips into something resembling a smile. Perhaps I am, my own. Octavia laughed bright and careless. She was beautiful in the way that made things easy. Dark curls that caught the light just so. Eyes that sparkled with perpetual amusement. At 21, she had already received 3 proposals. She had the luxury of choosing. Celestine had the luxury of nothing. Your father cannot truly mean to go through with it, Octavia said, though her tone suggested she knew otherwise. Cornelius Thorne is ghastly. Ghastly was too kind of a word. Cornelius Thorne was 45 years old with hands that lingered and a smile that never reached his eyes. He was wealthy beyond measure, which apparently forgave a multitude of sins. He wanted a wife young enough to mold, young enough to control, young enough to break. And Reginald Ashford, her father, had already accepted his offer. 2 months, that was all she had left. 2 months before the engagement would be announced. 2 months before her life became something she could no longer recognize as her own. He means it, Celestine said quietly. He gave me until the end of summer. Then the decision is made. Octavia's face softened with something that might have been pity. Celestine hated pity almost as much as she hated champagne. Then perhaps you should do something reckless, Octavia said, her eyes bright with mischief. Scandalous, something to make them all remember you exist. Celestine looked at her friend, really looked, and for a moment something wild and desperate unfurled in her chest. Like what? She asked. Octavia grinned. Like declaring you'll marry the first man who walks through that gate. The words hung in the air between them, absurd and impossible. And then Celestine said them. She said them loudly enough for the women nearby to hear. Loudly enough for the words to ripple outward like stones thrown into still water. Loudly enough that she could not take them back. I will marry the first man who enters this garden. The women around her gasped. Someone laughed. Someone else clapped, delighted by the audacity. No one believed her. Why would they? It was a joke, a moment of rebellion wrapped in champagne and frustration. Nothing more. Except the iron gate at the far end of the garden opened. The laughter died slowly like candles running out of air. A man stepped through. He was tall and still dressed in black so dark it seemed to drink the sunlight. His coat was perfectly tailored, severe, elegant, in a way that suggested old money and older power. He did not smile. He did not pause. He did not look confused or amused by the gathered crowd. He looked straight at her. Celestine felt the world narrow to the space between them. The Duke of Ravencrest had arrived. She knew him by reputation only. Everyone did. Lucian Ravencrest, Duke of Ravencrest, lord of an estate so vast it bordered 3 counties. A man who appeared at social functions like a shadow present, but never quite there. A man who never danced, never courted, never showed the slightest interest in anything resembling matrimony. A man whispered about in drawing rooms with equal parts fascination and fear. He crossed the lawn with deliberate steps, and the crowd parted for him the way water parts for stone. Celestine's fingers tightened around her champagne glass. Her heart hammered once hard and sharp, then settled into a rhythm that felt like warning bells. Up close, he was even more imposing than the story suggested. His face was all sharp angles and aristocratic severity. Pale, almost translucent skin that looked like it had never seen summer. Eyes the color of winter storms, gray and cold and utterly unreadable. Beautiful in the way that dangerous things are beautiful. Lady Celestine Ashford, he said. Her name sounded different in his voice. Lower, darker, like something spoken in a cathedral at midnight. Your Grace, she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. I heard you, he said simply. The garden held its breath. I heard your declaration. He continued, his eyes never leaving hers. And I accept. The words struck her like a physical blow. Around them, the whispers began. sharp and sudden, a wave of sound that crashed over everything. Celestine stared at him. This had to be a misunderstanding, a mistake. Men like him did not simply accept declarations made in jest. Your Grace, surely you understand that I was not serious, she said, keeping her voice low, trying desperately to salvage something from this disaster. I understand perfectly, he replied. You are unmarried. You are under pressure. You are being honest without intending to be. Heat flooded her cheeks. That does not mean you can simply agree to marry me. His head tilted slightly, a gesture that might have been curiosity. Why not? Because this is absurd. Because I do not know you. Because you are terrifying. The last word slipped out before she could stop it. Something flickered in his eyes. Not amusement exactly. Something colder. More assessing. Yet many marriages have been decided in gardens, he said calmly, and most of those involve people who knew each other far less than we do now. We do not know each other at all, she protested. We will. The certainty in his voice left no room for argument. He extended his arm. Walk with me, Lady Celestine. We are being observed. She hesitated. Every rational thought screamed at her to refuse to laugh this off to escape before the scandal consumed her entirely. But she had already been consumed, had she not? Already ruined by 5 years of rejection. Already promised to a man whose hands made her skin crawl. What did she have left to lose? Celestine placed her gloved hand on his arm. The fabric of his coat was cold beneath her fingers. Unnaturally cold even in the summer warmth. They walked in silence while the garden erupted into whispers behind them. He led her to a quiet corner near a stone wall covered in pale roses, away from the eyes, away from the judgment. When he stopped and turned to face her, his expression remained unreadable. You regret it already, he observed. Yes, she admitted. Entirely. That is acceptable. She blinked. You are serious about this? I am always serious. Why? The question burst from her before she could stop it. Why would you possibly want to marry me? You do not know me. You have never even seen me before today. His gray eyes studied her face as if she were a puzzle he was trying to solve. Because you do not want me. The answer made no sense. That is your reason, she asked incredulously. There are many women who do not want you, Your Grace. Most women want my title, he corrected. They want my wealth, my position, my name. You want escape. The word hit its mark with devastating accuracy. You were desperate, he continued, his voice even and measured. So am I. Her pulse quickened. Desperate for what? A wife, he said simply. That hardly narrows the field. I need an heir, and I need a marriage without illusions. No romance, no expectations of affection, no pretense of feelings that do not exist. Celestine folded her arms, trying to ignore the way her hands trembled. You make it sound like a business contract. It is. And what do I gain from this arrangement? He met her gaze without flinching. Protection, independence, a title that ensures no man may touch you without consequence, freedom to live as you choose within the bounds of propriety. Her breath caught despite herself. And love you offer none of that. I offer honesty, he replied, which is more than most. She thought of her father's ultimatum, thought of Cornelius Thorne waiting patiently for her to break, thought of a future chosen for her without her consent. She thought of the man before her, cold and blunt and terrifyingly direct. And strangely, impossibly, she thought she might prefer his honesty to anyone else's pretty lies. How soon would you expect an answer? She asked quietly. Tomorrow, he said. If I am to call on your father, I must do so before gossip turns against you. You planned this. I responded to opportunity. You cornered me. I gave you an option. They stared at each other. The air between them felt charged tight like the moment before a storm breaks. If I agree, Celestine said slowly, I will not be silent. I will not be owned. I will not pretend to be grateful for scraps of dignity. His lips twitched, just barely. It might have been the beginning of a smile or the ghost of one long forgotten. I would be disappointed if you did, he said. And if I refuse, then nothing changes, except that you will still be trapped. The truth of it made her chest ache. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, breathed in the scent of roses in summer and something else. Something cold and mineral like stone kept in shadow. When she opened her eyes, he was still watching her with that same unnerving intensity. Call on my father tomorrow, she said. The Duke inclined his head once. Wise. She laughed softly, bitterly. Or foolish. Those are often the same thing. He offered his arm again. Shall we return before society invents its own ending? She took it, felt again that strange coldness through the fabric, like touching marble in winter. As they walked back into the light and noise of the garden, Celestine knew one thing with terrible clarity. Her life had just split into before and after, and she had no idea which side would save her. The night passed in fragments. Celestine sat in her bedroom while her mother paced. Lavinia Ashford had always been beautiful in a delicate bird-like way. Tonight she looked breakable. "A duke," she kept saying. "The Duke of Ravencrest. I do not understand. Why would he choose you?" The words stung even though Celestine knew her mother did not mean them cruelly. It was simply the truth. "Why would he? He overheard my declaration," Celestine said for the third time, "and he found it amusing, I suppose." "Men like that are not amused by anything," Lavinia said, wringing her hands. "They are calculating, always calculating. He must want something. He wants an heir. He was quite clear about that." Her mother stopped pacing. "And you would give him one without love, without even the pretense of it." Celestine looked down at her hands. "I would give Cornelius Thorne one. At least the Duke does not frighten me in the same way." That was a lie. The Duke frightened her in entirely different ways. But she kept that to herself. Lavinia sank onto the edge of the bed, her face pale. "Your father will never agree to this. It is too sudden, too strange." But her mother was wrong. When the Duke called the next morning, Reginald Ashford received him in his study with something that looked almost like relief. Celestine stood in the doorway uninvited but unwilling to be left out of a conversation about her own future. The Duke stood near the window backlit by morning sun. Except the sun did not touch him the way it touched other things. It seemed to stop just short of his skin, as if even light was wary of getting too close. "You wish to marry my daughter," Reginald said. It was not a question. "Yes." "Why, Paula?" "Because she suits my purposes." Her father's jaw tightened. "That is hardly a romantic sentiment." "I did not offer romance. I offered honesty." Balmer Reginald studied the Duke with the same assessing look he used when evaluating business contracts. "What assurances can you give her? What guarantee that you will not mistreat her?" The Duke turned his gaze to Celestine. When their eyes met, she felt something shift in the air between them. Something unnameable. "I will not confine her to," he said, his voice steady and deliberate. "She may manage her own affairs, keep her own friendships, pursue her own interests. She will have control over her household. Her opinions will be respected. She will not be pressured to produce an heir before she is ready, and she will be safe." The last word hung in the air like a promise carved in stone. Reginald glanced at Celestine, then back at the Duke. "And what do you expect from her? Loyalty, truth, nothing more. Do you care for her, Your Grace?" The question caught Celestine off guard. She found herself holding her breath, waiting. The Duke paused. For the first time, he seemed to choose his words carefully. "Care is not the right word," he said finally, "but I find her presence steady, and I have need of steadiness." It was not a declaration of love. It was barely a compliment, but something in the simple honesty of it made Celestine's throat tighten. Her father stood, hands clasped behind his back. "And if I refuse you?" The Duke's expression did not change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Then society will wonder why a Duke was denied so abruptly. Rumors will form. None of them will be kind to your daughter." "Is that a threat?" "No, it is the world we live in." Celestine stepped forward before her father could respond. "May I speak?" Both men turned to her. She looked at the Duke, meeting those cold gray eyes directly. "Yesterday you said you needed a wife without illusions, someone who would not expect affection from you." "Yes, and you offer honesty rather than romance." "I do." She lifted her chin. "Then I will offer the same. I do not know if I can trust you. I do not know if you are cold or simply guarded. I do not know if we can build anything together. But I know what awaits me if I stay here. I know what my life becomes without this choice, and I cannot return to that." The Duke watched her steadily. "Then you accept?" Her father looked horrified. "Celestine?" She nodded once firmly. "Yes, I accept." She expected to see satisfaction on the Duke's face, some flicker of victory, but all she saw was a brief, unreadable softness, a shift in his expression, gone almost before it appeared. Her father exhaled sharply. "The banns must be read. Preparations must be made." "No bans," the Duke said. "I request a special license." Celestine blinked. "So soon?" "Yes, if we delay, pressure upon you will grow. I will not allow you to suffer more scrutiny than necessary." There was something almost protective in the way he said it. Her father sank into his chair, looking between them helplessly. "This is madness." "It is decided," the Duke said, and it was. 3 days later, Celestine stood in a small private chapel wearing a dress of cream silk chosen in haste by her mother. The ceremony was twilight dark despite the hour. The chapel had few windows, and those were stained glass that turned the fading sunlight into fragments of color that did not quite reach the floor. Only a handful of witnesses attended, her parents pale and silent. Mrs. Whitmore, the Duke's housekeeper, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes, and one other man introduced as Lord Dorian Ashworth, a cousin of the Duke. He was younger, handsome in a too-perfect way, with a smile that did not match his eyes. The Duke stood at the altar in black waiting. When Celestine walked down the short aisle, his gaze found hers and held it. There was something in his eyes she had not seen before. Not warmth exactly, but purpose, intent, as if she were the answer to a question he had been asking for a very long time. The vicar spoke the words with quiet reverence. When it came time for vows, the Duke's voice was low and steady. I will give you honesty and respect. I will protect your freedom. I will not bind you in ways you do not choose. This I swear. The words settled over her like a cloak. When her turn came, she spoke without trembling. I will stand beside you with truth and morality. I will not demand what you cannot give. This I swear. They exchanged rings. His fingers were cold when they touched hers. Not cool, cold, like touching ice wrapped in silk. When the vicar pronounced them, husband and wife, the Duke lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her gloved knuckles. The gesture was formal, measured, but there was something careful in it, almost gentle. The chapel doors opened and the last of the daylight spilled in. They were married. A carriage waited outside, black lacquer and dark horses. Everything about the Duke seemed to exist in shadow. Her parents embraced her tightly. Her mother wept. Her father whispered, "Be strong." Then Celestine stepped into the carriage beside her husband and the door closed. Silence filled the space. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, unsure where to look. The Duke sat across from her, his eyes focused on her with that same unsettling intensity. Are you well? He asked. She nodded. Overwhelmed. That is expected. Your life is changing. Yes. They rode in silence for several minutes. The carriage wheels rumbled over cobblestone, then dirt roads, then something smoother. She watched through the window as the town faded into countryside, then into deep forest. The Duke's voice broke the quiet. I will be clear about certain matters. Our marriage will not require of you what society typically expects from a wife. If you need time before sharing intimacies, I will grant it. Heat flooded her cheeks. Thank you. Do not thank me. It is simply fair. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been circling her mind since the garden. Have you ever been in love, Your Grace? No, bang. The answer was immediate, not even considered. I do not believe love is something I can offer, he said. Or something you feel, she asked softly. He studied her. Do you feel it, love? She had never really thought about it. Love had always seemed like something that happened to other people. Something in novels. Something distant and theoretical. No, she admitted. I have never felt it. He nodded once. Then we begin with honesty. The rest of the journey passed in that same strange quiet. Not uncomfortable exactly. Just weighted with all the things they were not saying. When the carriage crested a hill, Celestine saw Ravencrest Manor for the first time. It rose from the forest like something from a Gothic tale. All dark stone and tall windows and towers that pierced the twilight sky. Magnificent and lonely. Beautiful and forbidding. A castle without warmth. As they approached, servants lined the entrance, bowing as the Duke stepped out. He offered Celestine his hand. When she took it, she felt again that unnatural coldness, as if his body held no heat of its own. Inside, the manor was vast and elegantly furnished, but there was something off about it. The shadows seemed darker than they should be. The air held a chill that had nothing to do with temperature, and there were no mirrors, not in the entrance hall, not in the corridors they passed through, not anywhere she could see. This is your home now, the Duke said, his voice echoing slightly in the high-ceiling space. You may change whatever you wish. She turned to him. Whatever I wish. Yes, nothing in this house holds more value than your comfort. It was perhaps the kindest thing he had said to her. Mrs. Whitmore appeared, her steps silent on the marble floor. Your Grace, my lady. Welcome home. Celestine felt her heart skip at the title. My lady, Lady Ravencrest. That was her now. Mrs. Whitmore manages the household, the Duke said. She will help you learn whatever you need to know. The older woman smiled warmly. We are very happy to have you here, my lady. The manor has needed a mistress for quite some time. Celestine returned the smile, grateful for the genuine kindness in it. The Duke gestured toward the grand staircase. I will show you to your chambers. She followed him upstairs that seemed to go on forever. The portraits on the walls watched them pass with painted eyes, all of them dark-haired, all of them pale, all of them beautiful in that same cold, perfect way. He stopped at a pair of carved wooden doors. These are your rooms. Mine are down the corridor. If you need anything, you may send word. She looked at the doors, then back at him. And you? If you need something, he paused, tilted his head slightly as if the question surprised him. I do not often need anything. Perhaps not, she said softly. But if you do, you may send word as well. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise perhaps, or something close to it. I will consider that, he said. Then he bowed slightly and left her standing in the corridor. Celestine entered her chambers and found them breathtaking. A four-poster bed draped in deep burgundy, windows that overlooked the forest, a writing desk, bookshelves already filled with volumes she longed to explore. But no mirrors here either. She unpacked slowly, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. 3 days ago, she had been standing in a garden making a foolish joke. Now she was a duchess, married to a man she did not know, living in a house that felt like a beautiful tomb. When evening came, she was summoned to dinner. The dining room was smaller than she expected, intimate. A table set for two with silver and crystal that caught the candlelight like captured stars. The Duke stood when she entered. The formality of the gesture struck her as both courteous and distant. They sat. Servants brought food, roasted meat and vegetables, and fresh bread that smelled like heaven. The Duke did not eat. He cut his food, moved it around his plate, but nothing passed his lips except the wine in his glass. Dark red wine that looked almost black in the candlelight. Celestine tried not to stare, tried to focus on her own meal, but it was impossible not to notice. You are not hungry, she asked carefully. I ate earlier, he said. A lie. She knew it was a lie. She did not know how she knew, but she did. Tell me about yourself, Lady Celestine, he said, changing the subject with smooth precision. What do you enjoy? What interests occupy your time? She took a sip of wine to buy herself a moment. I enjoy reading, history mostly, poetry sometimes. I paint, though not very well. There is an unused gallery on the east wing. I will have it prepared for you. You do not need to frame. I wish to. The conversation continued in that careful way. He asked about her favorite books, her thoughts on music, her opinions on current events. His questions were direct but not unkind. He listened to her answers with genuine attention, his gray eyes never leaving her face. But he never ate, never took more than careful sips of wine. When dessert was served, she noticed him watching her with that same assessing look from the garden. What is it? She asked gently. He hesitated, as if weighing his words. You are calmer than I expected. She considered this. I think calm is what happens when fear has nothing left to take. His eyes softened, almost imperceptibly, but she caught it. Do you regret your decision? He asked quietly. She looked down at her hands, at the ring on her finger that caught the light. No. Do you regret yours? No, the single word held more weight than 100 explanations. After dinner, he escorted her to her chambers. They walked in silence through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. At her door, he stopped. Good night, Lady Celestine. She looked up at him. This stranger who was now her husband, this cold, beautiful mystery. Good night, husband. He inhaled, just slightly, as if the word had struck something deep. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows at the end of the corridor. Celestine entered her room and leaned against the closed door. She was married to a man who did not eat, who had skin like winter, who had no reflection. She was married to a man who frightened her and protected her in equal measure. And somewhere in the dark heart of this Gothic manor, secrets waited to be uncovered. She prepared for bed slowly, changed into the nightgown her mother had packed, brushed her hair by candlelight. Outside her window, the forest pressed close, thick and dark and endless. She was about to blow out the candle when she heard it, a sound from somewhere deep in the house. Not footsteps exactly. Something else. A whisper of movement, a shift in the air, coming from the direction Mrs. Whitmore had mentioned at dinner when she thought Celestine was not listening. The West Wing. Celestine stood at her window staring into the darkness and wondered what her husband was hiding, and whether she would survive learning the truth. The whispers began on the first night and never stopped. Not the whispers of servants, though Celestine heard those too. These were different. The manor itself seemed to speak. Floorboards creaking in empty halls, windows sighing in rooms that should have been sealed. The sense that Ravencrest was watching her, waiting to see what she would do. By the third day, Celestine found the portrait gallery. It was tucked behind an unmarked door on the second floor. A narrow staircase spiraled upward into darkness. She should have turned back, should have asked permission, should have waited. Instead, she lit a candle and climbed. The gallery stretched the length of the north wing. Heavy drapes covered tall windows. Portraits lined the opposite wall, dozens of faces emerging from shadow like ghosts made permanent. Ravencrest ancestors, Generations of pale faces and dark eyes. That same cold aristocratic beauty repeated across centuries. She walked slowly, studying each painting. The styles changed with the decades: Elizabethan ruffs, Georgian wigs, Victorian collars. But the faces remained eerily similar. And then she saw her. The portrait hung at the far end, larger than the others. A woman in emerald silk, dark hair loose around her shoulders. Eyes the exact shade of amber Celestine saw in every reflection. Not a reflection, because this woman was not her. But she could have been. The resemblance was perfect, complete. Same nose, same mouth, same tilt of chin, only the painted eyes held something different, a grief so profound it seemed to seep through the canvas. A brass plate read, Isolde Ravencrest, Duchess of Ravencrest, 1820 to 1876. Celestine's hand trembled as she reached toward the canvas. She was my wife. The voice came from darkness. Celestine spun. The Duke stood in the doorway, perfectly still. How long had he been watching? You frightened me, she breathed. I did not mean to. He stepped into the gallery. I heard footsteps. I wanted to ensure you were safe. She turned back to the portrait. She looks like me. Yes. That is why you chose me. Not a question. He moved beside her, both staring up at the painted woman. It was part of the reason. What happened to her? His jaw tightened. She died 150 years ago. The number struck like a blow, 150 years. That would make him... That is not possible, Celestine whispered. Many impossible things are true. She looked at him, at the pale skin, the gray eyes, the unnatural stillness. You do not eat. You avoid mirrors. You never appear in daylight. Her voice steadied. What are you bush on? You should return to your chambers. This conversation will not end well. I am already here, already married to you. I deserve the truth. They stood surrounded by painted dead, and the truth hung between them like a blade. I am vampire, he said simply. I have been for 350 years. The words should have terrified her, should have sent her running. Instead, they made terrible sense. That is why you wanted a marriage without love, she whispered. Because you cannot feel it. Because I have forgotten how. She looked at Isolde's portrait. Did you love her? I tried. His voice held regret. I failed. What killed her? Men who hunt my kind. They discovered what I was. They thought killing her would hurt me more than killing me would. He paused. They were right. Celestine's throat tightened. And you think I am her reborn somehow? No, I know you are not. He turned to face her. But your blood carries the same scent, the same signature. It drew me to that garden as surely as if you had called my name. My blood. Yes. The word hung like promise and threat. Are you going to kill me? She asked. No. Immediate, absolute. I swore to protect you. That vow holds more weight than you understand. Then why marry me? Why bring me here? Because I am lonely. The confession cost him. Because 350 years is long without hope. And when I heard you make that declaration, when I saw you fierce and desperate and alive, I thought perhaps I might remember what it felt like to be human. The honesty broke something in her chest. She should run, should scream, should do anything except stand here feeling sympathy for a creature that should not exist. But she had made a vow too. Truth and loyalty. Running felt like breaking it. Show me, she said. Show you what you are. All of it. No more shadows. He studied her, then nodded. As you wish. He stepped closer. In the candlelight, his eyes began to change. Gray, darkening, shifting until they glowed faint crimson. When he opened his mouth, she saw fangs. Not grotesque. Almost elegant. Sharp and deadly and terrible. This is what I am, he said, voice rougher. Monster dressed in man's clothing. Predator pretending at civilization. Celestine's heart hammered, but she did not step back. And do you want to hurt me? Every moment. Raw. Your blood calls to me like nothing has in a century, but wanting and doing are different things. I have not killed in 200 years. I will not start with my wife. Where do you get blood? Animals mostly. Sometimes willing donors from the village. Those who know what I am and accept payment. He paused. It sustains me. She absorbed this, trying to reconcile monster with man. Mrs. Whitmore knows, she said. She has served my family for 40 years. And Lord Ashworth, your cousin. Something dark crossed his face. Dorian is complicated. Is he like you? Yes, I turned him 80 years ago after Isolde died. I thought companionship might ease loneliness. His jaw tightened. I was wrong. Footsteps echoed from the staircase. Mrs. Whitmore appeared slightly breathless. Your Grace, forgive the intrusion. Lady Celestine has a visitor. Celestine blinked. A visitor? At this hour? Miss Octavia Blackwood. She arrived quite distressed, said it was urgent. Celestine's blood went cold. Octavia, here. Now. The Duke's eyes returned to gray. I will receive her in the drawing room. No, Celestine said quickly. I will speak to her alone first. In the library. He looked sharp. You do not trust her. I do not know, but something feels wrong. Then I will be nearby. If you need me, call out. I will hear you. She nodded, grateful. Octavia waited in the library, pacing before the fireplace. When Celestine entered, she rushed forward with apparent relief. Celestine, thank God. I have been so worried. Worried why? Thus, Octavia's eyes were wide earnest. You vanished so quickly, married so suddenly. No one has seen you. I had to make sure you were well. I am perfectly well. Are you Toma? Octavia glanced around the dark library. This place feels like a tomb. And your husband, she lowered her voice. People say terrible things, that he is not natural, that his first wife died under mysterious circumstances. She was murdered by hunters, Celestine said before she could stop herself. Octavia's eyes widened. Hunters, what do you mean? Too late. She forced calm. I misspoke. I meant thieves. Bandits. Long ago. But Octavia watched too carefully now. Too intently. You know something, Octavia said softly. Something you are not telling me. I know you should not have come here uninvited. Hurt flashed across Octavia's face. Or something like it. I am your friend, Celestine. I only want to help. Then help me by leaving. I am fine. I am safe. I am exactly where I chose to be. Octavia stared for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. But if you need me, you know where to find me. She left with a swirl of skirts, and Celestine stood in the empty library, instincts screaming. The Duke appeared from shadows near the bookshelf. She was lying. I know. Her heartbeat accelerated when you mentioned Isolde. And her scent. He paused. I have smelled it before, in places where hunters gather. Celestine's chest tightened. You think she works with them? I think she is not the friend you believe her to be. That night, Celestine could not sleep. She sat by her window watching the forest, trying to make sense of everything. Vampires were real. Her husband was one. Her friend might be a spy. And somewhere in this, she was supposed to survive. A soft knock came. Enter, she called. The Duke stepped inside, remaining near the doorway. I wanted to ensure you were unharmed. Physically, yes. Emotionally, she laughed bitterly. I am not certain. He moved closer, vulnerability in his eyes. I should not have told you. I have put you in danger. You gave me honesty. That was the bargain. Honesty can be a weapon. So can lies. She stood facing him. Do you regret marrying me? No, never. The intensity struck her. But I fear what I have brought into your life. I fear it too, but I am here now. Running solves nothing. They stood in candle-lit darkness, and something passed between them. Not love, not yet, but understanding. Recognition. Two people in impossible circumstances choosing to face them together. There is more you should know, he said quietly, about Dorian. Tell me. He is not content being what he is. He craves power, influence, things I have denied him. The Duke's expression darkened, and he has taken interest in you, in your blood specifically. Why? Because it is rare, purer than most. He can smell it from across the manor. Her pulse quickened. Is he dangerous? All vampires are dangerous, but Dorian is ambitious, and ambition makes creatures like us reckless. A week passed in uneasy peace. Celestine learned the manor's rhythms. She painted in daylight when Lucian slept, read in evenings, dined alone, growing accustomed to his absence. They spoke occasionally, brief conversations, careful words revealing nothing and everything. But she felt him watching, always watching, a shadow at the edge of vision, a presence in darkness. Then Octavia returned. This time during day, when Lucian could not receive her, Mrs. Whitmore showed her to the drawing room where Celestine embroidered. Celestine? Octavia's smile was bright. I brought you something. She handed Celestine a small box. Inside was a silver locket, delicate and beautiful. To remember our friendship, Octavia said. No matter what happens. Celestine took it carefully. The silver felt cold. Thank you. Try it on. She fastened the locket, and Octavia watched with satisfaction. They spoke of trivial things, fashion, weather, acquaintances. But beneath polite conversation, Celestine felt wrongness. When Octavia finally left, Celestine stood watching her carriage disappear. You should not wear that. She turned. Dorian Ashworth lounged in the doorway. He had appeared silently like all vampires. Where what the locket? He moved closer, fluid and predatory. Silver burns us. Did you not know your friend is testing you? Celestine's hand flew to her throat. Testing me for what? To see if you are like us. Dorian's smile was sharp. Or if you are still deliciously human. She removed the locket quickly, again unmarked. Why would she care? Because hunters need to know what they are killing. He circled her like a wolf. Your friend has been asking questions, Celestine. About Lucien, this manor. You. She is not my friend, is she? No, something far more dangerous. Her mind raced. She works for Cornelius Thorne. Clever girl, yes. The merchant who wanted you is also a hunter, has been for generations. And your dear Octavia has been watching you for 2 years, waiting to see if you would lead her to something worth killing. The betrayal cut deep. 2 years of friendship. All lies. Does Lucien know? He suspects, but he is too honorable to act without proof. Dorian stepped closer, something sweet and wrong on his breath. I, however, am not burdened by honor. What do you want, Lord Ashworth? The same thing all vampires want. Power. And you, my dear Duchess, have something that could give me that. I do not understand. Your blood. His eyes gleamed red. It is special. Rare. I noticed at the wedding. Lucien smells it too, though he pretends otherwise. Celestine backed away. He promised not to hurt me. Lucien keeps promises. I do not. Dorian's fangs extended. One taste, that is all I need. Your blood could make me stronger than him. Strong enough to take what should have been mine. Mrs. Whitmore is in the village. Servants dismissed. We are quite alone. He lunged. Celestine screamed, throwing herself backward. Her hand caught the silver locket. Without thinking, she hurled it. Silver struck his face. Dorian shrieked, stumbling. Smoke rose where metal touched skin. You will pay for that, he snarled. The door slammed open. Lucien stood there, temperature plummeting, his eyes pure crimson fangs extended, fury beyond anything imaginable. Touch her, Lucien said, voice barely human, and I will end you. Dorian laughed, wiping blood. She is wasted on you, cousin. You will never appreciate what she is. What I am, Celestine whispered. Lucien's eyes never left Dorian. Leave now, before I forget we share blood. Dorian's smile was cruel. To her, Lucien, ask your pretty wife what runs in her veins. Ask why her blood calls like a siren song. Then he vanished too fast to follow. Celestine sagged. Lucien was at her side instantly, cold hands steadying. Are you hurt? No, he did not touch me. He will not get another chance, carved in iron. What did he mean, she asked. What is in my blood? Lucien closed his eyes briefly. When opened, red had faded to gray. We need to speak with Mrs. Whitmore. They found the housekeeper poring over an ancient book with leather covers and yellowed pages. She looked up, expression grave. She knows then. Dorian told her enough to ask questions, Lucien said. She deserves the full truth. Mrs. Whitmore gestured to chairs. Sit, child. This will not be easy. Celestine sat. Lucien remained standing, a dark sentinel. Your bloodline, Mrs. Whitmore began, traces back centuries to the original hunters, the Van Helsings, though they went by other names. Celestine's breath caught. I am descended from vampire hunters. Yes, but your line is special. Every few generations, a child is born with pure blood, sanguis purus, blood that can kill vampires with a drop, or, she paused, cure them. Cure them of what? Vampirism itself. Silence. Lucien's hand tightened on Celestine's chair. That is why she smells different. Why her blood calls. Yes, to most vampires she is deadly. One taste would poison them. Mrs. Whitmore looked at Celestine with pity. But to ancient ones like Lucien and Dorian, her blood offers something else. A chance to become human again. That is why you married me, Celestine said. Not because I look like Isolde, because of my blood. No, Lucien moved to face her, kneeling. I married you because I heard desperation matching my own. The blood I did not know about your bloodline until after the wedding. Mrs. Whitmore discovered it researching your family. And Cornelius Thorne? Does he know? Yes, Mrs. Whitmore said grimly. The Thorne family has hunted your bloodline for generations. Not to kill you, but control you. To breed more hunters with pure blood. Horror washed over her. That is why he wanted to marry me. Yes, and why Octavia Blackwood was sent to befriend you years ago. To watch, to wait until you led them to vampires they could hunt. And now I have led them here. Now they know where to find us, Lucien confirmed. They will come, soon, and when they do, they will try to take you. Celestine stood abruptly, pacing. What are my options? You could run, Mrs. Whitmore said. Oh, and hide. They will always find me, Celestine said bitterly. My father would tell them. Octavia would track me. I would be alone and vulnerable. Then what do you want? She met his eyes. I want to fight. I want to stop running. I want the window shattered. Glass exploded inward. Men in dark clothing poured through armed with crossbows and silver stakes. Hunters. And leading them was Cornelius Thorne's smile sharp as a blade. Hello, Celestine, he said. Time to come home. Lucian moved between her and the hunters, fangs bared. But Cornelius raised a crossbow bolt glinting silver. One-step vampire and this goes through your heart. Mrs. Whitmore grabbed Celestine's arm. Go, now, servant's passage behind the bookshelf. Too late. Octavia stepped from behind Cornelius, vial of clear liquid in hand. She threw it at Lucian. When it struck, he screamed. Holy water, burning like acid. Celestine lunged toward him, but hands grabbed her. Strong hands. Hunter's hands. No, she screamed. Cornelius's face appeared before hers victorious. You should have married me, my dear. It would have been simpler. Something struck her head. Pain exploded. Darkness swallowed. The last thing she heard was Lucian roaring her name. Then nothing. She woke in cold and darkness. Stone beneath, stone around. The smell of mildew and decay. Celestine opened her eyes slowly, head pounding. Candles flickered in iron sconces casting shadows on walls curving upward into vaulted ceilings. A church, abandoned judging by broken pews and shattered stained glass. She tried to move. Her hands were bound behind her back with silver chains. They burned her wrists, but not like they would burn a vampire. Just ordinary pain. She is awake, Octavia's voice echoed. Celestine turned her head. Her former friend sat on a broken altar, legs crossed entirely at ease. Why? Celestine asked hoarsely. Why pretend to be my friend? Because Cornelius needed to know what you were, whether the bloodline continued, whether you had the gift. Octavia shrugged. 2 years of tea parties to confirm our suspicions. You are the last of the pure blood Van Helsings. I am not a Van Helsing. I am an Ashford. Your mother's mother was a Van Helsing. The line passes through women. Octavia stood, moving closer. And now that line belongs to us. Footsteps echoed. Cornelius emerged from shadows, and behind him, Celestine's breath caught. Dorian Ashworth. You are working together, she whispered. Dorian's smile was sharp. Surprised you should not be. Cornelius wants your bloodline. I want your blood. Our goals align beautifully. Lucian will come for me. We are counting on it, Cornelius said. This church is surrounded by holy ground, blessed and soaked in prayers. Your husband cannot enter without suffering. And when he tries, he gestured to crossbows positioned at every entrance. We will end him. Why, what did he ever do to you? He exists, Cornelius said simply. An existence of his kind is an abomination. Dorian laughed. Such high morals for a man planning forced breeding. Celestine's stomach turned. That is your plan, to make me produce heirs with pure blood, Cornelius finished. Yes, we will create the greatest vampire hunters the world has known. Your children will cleanse the earth of creatures like him. I will never. You will not have a choice. Rage flooded through her. Lucian was right. You are not a man. You are a monster in a man's skin. Cornelius backhanded her. Pain exploded. Blood filled her mouth. But Celestine smiled through the blood. At least he admits what he is. Enough, Dorian stepped between them. We need her blood intact. No permanent damage until after the ritual. What ritual? Celestine demanded. Dorian's eyes gleamed red. The one where I drink from you. Where your pure blood makes me powerful enough to challenge Lucian. Where I finally take what should have been mine. He will kill you. Not if I kill him first. And with your blood in my veins, I will be strong enough. Octavia checked the chains. She is secure. Sun rises in 3 hours. Even if Ravencrest tries during daylight, he will burn. Then we wait, Cornelius said. By tomorrow night, we will have everything. They left her in darkness. Celestine tested the chains. They held fast. Silver burned her wrists, but she pulled anyway, ignoring pain. She had to get free, had to warn Lucian, had to stop whatever terrible thing was coming. But the chains would not break. Outside, she heard hunters preparing their trap. Somewhere in Ravencrest Manor, her husband was planning a rescue. And Celestine knew with terrible certainty that if he came for her, one of them would not survive the night. The hours crawled past like wounded things. Celestine sat in darkness, silver chains burning her wrists and counted her heartbeats. Each one felt like borrowed time. Each one brought her closer to whatever horror Cornelius and Dorian had planned. She had stopped trying to break free. The chains held fast and her wrists were raw and bleeding. The scent of her own blood hung in cold air, metallic and sharp. Outside, she could hear hunters moving, setting traps. positioning crossbows, whispering prayers over silver-tipped bolts that would pierce vampire flesh like paper, waiting for Lucian to come. And he would come. She knew that with the same certainty she knew her own name. He had promised to protect her, had sworn it, and despite everything he was despite 350 years of predatory instinct, she believed him, which meant he was walking into a trap. The eastern sky was beginning to lighten when she heard it, a sound so faint human ears should not have caught it. But she did. Footsteps. Not human footsteps. Something faster. Something that moved like shadow given form. The hunters heard it too. She saw them tense, raising weapons. Cornelius appeared from behind a broken pillar face alight with anticipation. "He is here," he breathed. The fool actually came. Octavia moved to the church doors, peering through a crack. "I see movement in the trees. Multiple figures. How many? I cannot tell. The shadows are too deep." Dorian laughed from his position near Celestine. "Lucian would not bring others. He is too proud, too protective. He will come alone." "Then this will be easier than I thought," Cornelius said. The church doors exploded inward, not opened. Exploded. Wood and iron shredding like paper, scattering across stone in a shower of splinters. And through the destruction walked Lucian Ravencrest. His coat was gone, his shirt was torn, but his eyes burned with crimson fire that lit darkness like twin stars. And on his face was an expression of such focused rage that even the hunters took an involuntary step back. "Release her," he said. His voice was barely human, raw and deep and ancient. Now, Cornelius raised his crossbow. "One more step and this bolt goes through your heart." Lucian took 3 steps forward, crossing the threshold onto consecrated ground. The effect was immediate and terrible. Smoke rose from his skin where it touched blessed stone. His body shuddered, his jaw clenched against pain that must have been excruciating. But he did not stop. "You are on holy ground, vampire," Cornelius said, voice sharp with triumph. "Every step is agony. You cannot reach her." "Watch me." Lucian moved forward, and each step left burning footprints on stone. His skin blistered. His breathing became labored. But his eyes never left Celestine. 3 hunters fired crossbows simultaneously. Lucian moved too fast to follow, twisting, dodging. 2 bolts whistled past. The third grazed his shoulder, silver burning through flesh. He did not even flinch. "Celestine," he called out, voice cutting through chaos. "Do not be afraid." "I am not," she called back, and realized it was true. Terrified, yes, but not afraid. Not with him here. Dorian stepped from shadows, his own eyes blazing red. "You should have stayed away, cousin. Should have let her go. Should have accepted that some things are worth more than your pride." "She is not a thing," Lucian snarled. "She is my wife. She is a tool, a weapon, pure blood in a perfect vessel." Dorian circled closer to Celestine, movements predatory. "And I am taking that weapon for myself." He lunged for Celestine's throat. Lucian moved faster than physics should allow, slamming into Dorian mid-leap. They crashed into a stone pillar, hard enough to crack it. The sound echoed like thunder. The 2 vampires tore at each other with inhuman strength and speed. Dorian was younger, faster. But Lucian was older, stronger, fueled by something beyond mere survival. Fury. Pure, focused fury. More crossbow bolts flew. Some struck stone, some struck flesh. Lucian took a bolt to the leg and kept fighting. Dorian caught one in the ribs and laughed. "You cannot win this," Dorian hissed, fangs slashing toward Lucian's throat. "Not on holy ground, not wounded, not against all of us." "I do not need to win," Lucian said. "I just need to free her." He threw Dorian aside with devastating force and lunged toward Celestine. Cornelius fired his crossbow. The bolt struck Lucian in the chest just left of his heart. Silver bit deep, his body convulsed. He fell to one knee, smoke rising from the wound. "No," Celestine screamed. Cornelius walked forward, slowly loading another bolt. "It ends here, vampire. Your kind. All of it ends." Lucian's hand closed around the bolt in his chest. With a sound like tearing flesh, he ripped it free. Blood black as midnight poured from the wound. "Not today," he gasped. And then Mrs. Whitmore stepped through the shattered doors. She was not alone. Behind her came servants from Ravencrest Manor. Groundskeepers. Stable hands. The cook. People Celestine had seen in passing, but never really noticed. And in Mrs. Whitmore's hands was a book. Ancient, leather-bound, glowing with faint silver light. "Enough," the old woman said, her voice carrying authority that silenced even the hunters. "This ends now." Cornelius turned to her, face twisted with contempt. "Old woman, you have no power here. I have knowledge, which is the only power that matters." She opened the book, and the pages seemed to shine from within. I know what the girl is. I know what her blood can do. And I know the cure has three forms. The church fell silent. Celestine stared at Mrs. Whitmore. Three forms. Yes, child, your blood can cure vampirism, but the cure can be shaped, directed. What are you talking about? Dorian demanded, pulling himself upright. Blood dripped from his wounds, but he was healing already. Mrs. Whitmore looked at Lucian, eyes soft with pity. A full cure would make you mortal, return you to what you were. But 350 years of aging would catch up within weeks. You would die. Lucian's eyes closed briefly. I know. But there is another way. A partial cure. If the blood is given with intention, with ritual, it can restore some of what you lost without taking all of what you are. What would it restore? Celestine asked, voice shaking. Humanity, emotion, the ability to walk in sunlight, the end of bloodthirst. Mrs. Whitmore's gaze never left Lucian. You would keep your strength, your longevity, but you would feel again. Everything you have suppressed for 3 centuries would return. The words hung like a benediction. That is impossible, Cornelius said flatly. Vampirism cannot be partially cured. Says the man who knows nothing of true magic. Mrs. Whitmore gestured to Celestine. Her bloodline goes back to the first Van Helsing. The cure was meant to offer redemption, not just death. Redemption, Dorian spat. I do not want redemption. I want power. He moved towards Celestine with deadly speed. But something stopped him. Not Lucian, not the hunters, something else. A barrier, invisible but absolute, like striking a wall of solid air. Dorian recoiled, face twisted in confusion. What? Celestine felt it then. Heat flooding through her veins. Not painful, not burning, just warm, alive, powerful. The chains around her wrists began to glow. Her blood is activating, Mrs. Whitmore said with satisfaction. Fear and desperation trigger the gift. She is protected now. No vampire can touch her without her permission. The silver chains shattered like glass. Celestine stood, wrists bleeding but free, and around her a faint shimmer hung in the air. A shield made of her own power. Dorian lunged again and again, the barrier threw him back. This time he screamed, skin smoking, where it had touched the invisible wall. You see, Mrs. Whitmore said, pure blood protects itself. Cornelius raised his crossbow at Celestine. Then I will simply kill her from a distance. No. The word came from an unexpected source. Octavia stepped forward, placing herself between Cornelius and Celestine. Her face was pale but determined. Move aside, Cornelius ordered. No, I will not. Have you lost your mind? Perhaps I have finally found it. Octavia's hands trembled, but she did not move. I have watched you, Cornelius. Watched how you speak of duty and righteousness while planning to force a woman into breeding like livestock. I told myself it was necessary, that the ends justified the means. They do. They do not. Octavia's voice grew stronger. I befriended Celestine under false pretenses. I lied to her for 2 years. I helped you kidnap her. But this, she gestured to the crossbow, this is where I draw the line. I will not help you murder an innocent woman. She is not innocent. She is vampire spawn now. She is braver than I ever was. Octavia turned to Celestine, tears streaming. I am sorry for all of it. I know you cannot forgive me. I do not deserve forgiveness, but I can at least stop adding to my sins. Cornelius's face twisted with rage. You betray me now after everything. I betray myself if I continue. He fired the crossbow. Octavia gasped as the bolt struck her shoulder. Not a killing blow, but she crumpled. Before Cornelius could reload, Lucian was on him. The vampire moved despite his wounds, despite the holy ground burning his feet. He caught Cornelius by the throat and lifted him effortlessly. You threatened my wife, Lucian said, voice like grinding stone. You shot an unarmed woman. You have run out of mercy. Kill me, Cornelius choked out. Prove you are the monster I always knew you were. Lucian's fangs extended. For a moment, Celestine thought he would do it, thought 350 years of restraint would finally break. But Lucian's eyes found hers across the church, and something in her expression made him pause. No, Lucian said quietly, I will not give you the satisfaction of making me into what you believe I am. He threw Cornelius aside into the waiting arms of Ravencrest servants. They bound him with practiced efficiency. Dorian tried to run, but Celestine stepped forward and her shield expanded. It caught him like a net, pinning him to the floor. You cannot hold me forever, he snarled. I do not need forever, Celestine said. I just need long enough. She walked to Lucian. He was still standing, but barely. Wounds covered his body, burns from holy ground, cuts from silver, blood staining his torn clothes. and in his eyes beneath the pain was something she had never seen before. Fear, not of death, of loss. "Celestine," he breathed, "are you hurt?" "No, but you are. It will heal. Not if you stay on consecrated ground." She glanced at Mrs. Whitmore. "How do we do it? The partial cure?" "Child, you should think. I have thought. For hours in those chains I thought, and I know what I want." Lucian reached for her hand, then stopped, as if afraid to touch her. "The cure will hurt me. More than you can imagine. 350 years of suppressed emotion returning at once. It may break me. Then I will be there when you shatter, and I will help you put yourself back together." "Why?" The question was raw, desperate. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because you walked onto holy ground for me. Because you faced silver and sunlight in death for me. Because you kept every promise you made, even when it cost you everything." She stepped closer until only inches separated them. "And because I think you have been loving me all along. You just could not feel it fully." His breath caught. "How did you know?" "The way you look at me, the way you speak my name, the way you are willing to die for me." She smiled through tears. Love does not require feeling to exist, but it deserves to be felt. Mrs. Whitmore approached with the ancient book. "If you are certain, we must do this now, before his wounds worsen." "I am certain." The ritual was simpler than Celestine expected. Mrs. Whitmore drew symbols on the stone floor in salt and ash. She positioned Lucien in the center, still kneeling from his wounds. The servants formed a circle around them, each holding a candle. "Your blood must be given freely," Mrs. Whitmore explained, "not taken, and you must speak your intention clearly." Celestine nodded. She took the silver knife Mrs. Whitmore offered and drew it across her palm. Blood welled up, dark red and pure. She knelt before Lucian, meeting his eyes. "I give this freely," she said, "to restore what was stolen, to return what was lost, to make you whole again." She pressed her bleeding palm to his lips. Lucian hesitated, his whole body trembling. "If I taste your blood, then taste it and come back to me." He closed his eyes, opened his mouth, and drank. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Lucian's body arched backward, a scream tearing from his throat. Not pain, something beyond pain, something that had no name. 350 years of emotion suppressed and buried and locked away came flooding back all at once. Love, grief, joy, sorrow, rage, peace. All of it crashing through him like a tsunami through a dam. His skin began to glow, faint at first, then brighter, like light trying to break through shadow. Celestine held his hand, refusing to let go, even when his grip tightened enough to bruise. "I am here. I am here." The glow intensified. The candles around them flickered wildly. The very air seemed to vibrate. And then, with a sound like breaking glass, something shattered. The darkness that had clung to Lucian for centuries simply dissolved. He collapsed forward, gasping. When he looked up, his eyes were no longer gray. They were blue, bright, clear, human blue. "Celestine," he whispered. And in that single word was 350 years of longing finally given voice. He reached for her, and this time his hands were warm. She caught him as he fell, holding him while he shook, while he wept, while centuries of frozen grief melted into tears. "I feel it," he gasped against her shoulder. "God help me, I feel everything. The loneliness, the loss, the love I had buried so deep I thought it was dead." "It was never dead," she whispered, "just sleeping." They knelt together on the cold stone floor, and Celestine held her husband while he remembered how to be human. Outside, the sun was rising. Dorian, still trapped by Celestine's shield, watched with eyes wide with horror. "What have you done? What have you become?" "Something you will never understand," Lucian said. His voice was different now, warmer. "Alive. Someone willing to give up power for love." The shield around Celestine faded as her focus shifted. Dorian scrambled to his feet, backing toward the door. "This is not over," he snarled. You will leave," Lucian said, standing with newfound strength. "Leave England, leave Europe, disappear into whatever darkness will have you. Because if I ever see you again, I will not show mercy. You are weak now, half human. I could destroy you. Try." Dorian looked at Lucian, saw something in those newly blue eyes that made him pause. Then he fled, vanishing into the pre-dawn shadows. The servants released Cornelius from his bonds. He stood rubbing his wrists, face twisted with bitter defeat. "You have won nothing," he said to Lucian. "You are still a monster, just a different kind now." "Perhaps, but I am a monster who chooses love over hate." Lucian glanced at the hunters who had accompanied Cornelius. "Take him. Turn him over to the authorities. He attempted murder. Kidnapping. Let the law deal with him. You would trust the law, Cornelius laughed bitterly. Human law. I would trust it more than I trust your version of justice. The hunters, looking uncertain, gathered their weapons. One by one they followed as two Ravencrest servants escorted Cornelius from the church. Only Octavia remained clutching her wounded shoulder. Celestine approached her slowly. You saved my life. I nearly ended it first, Octavia said, voice thick with shame. I do not deserve your gratitude. No, you do not. But you deserve a chance to be better than you were. Octavia's eyes filled with tears. I spent 2 years lying to you, using your friendship. I do not know how to be anything but what I was. Then learn. Celestine's voice was firm but not unkind. We all have to learn how to be better than our worst choices. She extended her hand. Octavia stared at it for a long moment. Then slowly she took it. Mrs. Whitmore bandaged Octavia's wound while servants began clearing the church. Lucian stood near the broken doors staring out at the forest beyond. Celestine joined him. What are you thinking? That the sun will rise soon, and for the first time in 350 years, want to see it. Are you afraid? Terrified? What if the cure did not work? What if I burn? Then I will burn with you. He turned to her, and in the growing light, she saw tears on his face. I love you. I can say it now. I can feel it. And it is overwhelming and terrible and beautiful. I know. The first ray of sunlight broke over the horizon. Lucian tensed, waiting for pain, for burning, for the end. But the light touched his skin like a benediction. Warm, gentle, safe. He held out his hand, watching the way the morning sun turned his skin gold. Then he laughed, a sound of pure, incredulous joy. I had forgotten, he breathed. I had forgotten how beautiful it is. Celestine took his hand, and together they stood in the doorway of the ruined church, watching the dawn paint the world in shades of rose and gold. Behind them, the darkness of the night faded. Before them, the light of a new day promised things neither of them dared to hope for. But hope, Celestine was learning, had a way of surprising you. 6 months later, Celestine stood in Lady Hartwell's garden, the same garden where it all began. Her hand rested on her swelling belly, feeling their child move beneath her palm. Ravencrest Manor was different now. Light flooded every room. Flowers bloomed in window boxes. The Gothic tomb had become a home. Across the lawn, a young woman laughed with her friends. I swear I shall marry the first man who enters this garden. The gate opened. A young man stepped through, looking slightly lost. The woman who had made the declaration froze. Her friend gasped. Lucian appeared at Celestine's side, slipping his hand into hers. His skin was warm now, warm, always alive in ways he had not been before. Should we warn her? He asked, eyes dancing with amusement, and spoiled a surprise. Celestine smiled. Some lessons must be learned firsthand. He pulled her close, his other hand joining hers on their child. The baby kicked strong and insistent. I love you, he said. I love you, she replied. They turned back toward the manor, no longer a place of shadows, but a home filled with light and laughter and life. Their story had begun with a desperate joke and a vampire's acceptance. It continued with love, redemption, and the impossible made possible. Forever.